Board, he's Teddy Covers. I am Drew Martin. Happy Monday morning, each and every Monday morning, right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. Teddy, welcome in, man. Happy Monday morning to you.
Hey, happy Monday, Drew. And that's the beauty of this show, okay? The world can be in chaos. The country can be in flames. Monday morning, me and you are going to be here. We're going to be talking NFL. So if it's chaos outside, and certainly, I mean, I hope you stayed safe this weekend. That's all I can say. It's the country in turmoil right now. It's a little bit scary times. And it's important to have some semblance of normalcy. Drew and I are going to try to do that for you guys every week. And we'll start here. And, I wrote down AFC West. Look at me. I'm an idiot. AFC North today, my friend. 4 teams to break down. We'll talk about season wins. We'll talk about off-season moves. Talk about what happened last year for real. We'll talk about what we expect to happen this year for real. You're looking for a distraction. It's a pretty good one. So I kept my mind, and that's the beauty of it, Drew. When you sit down and do your work, the world doesn't, the world can be in flames. You kind of ignore it because you're sitting down and focused. I was able to focus yesterday. I was able to focus this morning. Hopefully we got some good info for you.
Yeah, I mean, Teddy, it was a wild weekend, no doubt about it. But you're right. Normalcy, it was nice to just kind of start preparing for this show with you. I mean, this is my favorite show of the week here, and we got the AFC North preview show here, guys, for the next 40 minutes or so. We're going to go Baltimore, Cleveland, Cincinnati, then Pittsburgh. Answer some questions. We got a bunch of good questions off of Twitter, Teddy. And guys in the chat, thanks for joining us. Feel free to ask any questions. We'll get to them at the end. We got David H. in from Alabama. Welcome in. Also, Paul in here from across the pond in England. Welcome in, Paul. If anybody out there is in, let us know where you're watching from and what you want to hear about. Sir Rook, welcome in. Domingo, Andrew McGinnis, Chris Lippins. What is up, man? Happy Monday morning to everybody. But Teddy, AFC North last year, Baltimore Ravens, man. In my opinion, the surprise team of the NFL, 14-2 straight up, 7-1 at home, 7-1 on the road, was 10-2 in conference. ATS 10-6. If you were betting the Ravens last year, you were making some money in a slight over trend. I have them at 9-7. Looking at Caesars right now, they have them 12 wins, slight juice towards the under, -120 towards the under. Baltimore Ravens. What's your overall thoughts this upcoming year, Teddy?
Well, I mean, let's start with a little bit of an overview before the division.
Okay.
Baltimore, Caesars has 12. There's line variance, and at the open, there was significant line variance on literally every team in the division. You could have found, and when I say line variance, that's what I'm talking about. Baltimore, there was 11s and 12s. Now the market's kind of settled at 11.5. Talk about Caesars hanging at 12 still. Cincinnati was in the 5.5 range. Now they're pretty much a 5.5. Cleveland was 8.5. I'm going to call it 8.5 for right now. Pittsburgh was anywhere from 8 to 9. There was even a 9.5 out there at the open, I think. They're lined at 9 right now. So Ravens 11.5, Steelers 9, Browns 8.5, Bengals 5.5. And let's do it: Baltimore, Cincy, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, just because that's the order, the order that I have my notes in. I have them all in alphabetical order. So Cincy before Cleveland. But when we start, we want to look at last year. And how much of these teams' success or failure a year ago was based on schedule, and it's really surprising. In the same division, it's not unusual to see dramatic schedule disparities because let's say there's 3 good teams in the division and a bottom feeder. The bottom feeder has to play the 3 good teams, and the 3 good teams all play the bottom feeder. So the strength of schedule ends up being like it looks like the worst teams played a tougher schedule, and the weaker teams or the better teams played an easier schedule just because of the nature of the division. In this division last year, there was some of that, but there was also the normal randomness. When you're playing teams and their quarterbacks hurt, they're not the same team they were a month ago. And based on my power rating numbers, the week the games were played last year, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, very easy schedules. Cincinnati and Cleveland, both very tough schedules. Top quartile for the 2 disappointments in the division. And certainly Pittsburgh, we're not going to call them a major disappointment because Ben got hurt and they still finished 500. But Pittsburgh and Baltimore, based on who they played and when they played them, a bottom quartile schedule. So within the same division, two teams really up against it last year, the two bad teams, and the good team and the mediocre team, Baltimore and Pittsburgh, both had it really easy schedule-wise. Top quartile and bottom quartile in terms of strength of schedule toughness. So that's our starting point for here. We know that Cleveland and Cincy played a tougher than average schedule last year. Pittsburgh and Baltimore a little bit easier. And that's where we're going to start. We look at this division as a whole. They're going to play, obviously, the AFC North, each of the three division mates twice. The two divisions they're lined up against this year, the NFC East and the AFC South. When you add up the win totals for those two divisions, they're two of the weakest divisions in football. So relatively easy strength of schedule for all of these teams. This is not a division to play a whole lot of unders in 2020 based on strength of schedule for this year. So that's kind of your overview of the AFC North in terms of where we're starting from as a division, what the numbers are, and what we can look for in terms of strength of schedule this year. Relatively easy schedule across the board for this division.
And that makes it's a huge difference, Teddy, in terms of what division you're kind of matched up against here. In it sounds like leaning towards the overs, or at least looking towards overs in this division. In Baltimore at 12, Pittsburgh Caesars has them at 9. We're seeing Cleveland Browns at 8.5, and then the Cincinnati Bengals just at 5 wins, Joe Burrow and company. But I guess just starting at the top here, both ABC order and I guess projected finish with the Baltimore Ravens at 12 wins. Would you lean one way or the other on Baltimore? Have you, by looking at their schedule, any certain weeks where you would look to kind of be betting on Baltimore? I mean, right out the gate last year, they were a great bet, man. Or are there certain weeks where
Incorrect. Baltimore started out the gate last year 1-4 ATS, I believe, and then they went 9-1 ATS down the stretch. They got beat at home by Cleveland. They had another an unimpressive victory over somebody weak. And then they got hot and covered every point spread. I mean, they were again 9-1 their last 10 a year ago from the start of the season. And again, I had a ticket on the Ravens under their win total last year, as wrong can be. And the thought process was Ozzie Newsome, the longtime GM, is gone. You have a QB in Lamar Jackson who prior to last year, let's just say there were plenty of question marks about Lamar Jackson. You had a defense that had basically went on a massive transformation a year ago, where they let all the, many of their high-priced veterans go and went with the youth movement. And lo and behold, they started out struggling and they ended up being as good as anybody in the NFL. It was an impressive, from a coaching standpoint, Harbaugh was brilliant last year. He really was. Greg Roman, his OC, was brilliant last year. From an organizational standpoint, all right, Ozzie Newsome is gone. Eric Acosta picked up right up where he left off. They had an incredible draft a year ago. The coaching staff basically returns intact. And you look at the numbers, 9-7, 10-6, 14-2 over the last 3 years. All right, they're not being asked to go 14-2 this year. They got to go 12-4. And again, if you're betting them over, God, find an 11.5. It's mostly 11.5 out there. It's not 12. From a statistical standpoint a year ago, 6.1 yards per play on offense, well above the league average. That's 5.5. 5.2 yards per play allowed on defense. That's better than league average. They were plus 10 in turnovers. There were a lot, the statistical profile, maybe not quite as good as a 14-2 record, but it certainly wasn't a profile that makes you say, oh, this was a fraud. They were outgaining their opponents. They were stuffing teams on D. They were making big plays. They were winning turnover battles. None of that on paper is likely to change. As I said, this is, the coaching staff returns basically intact. From a off-season moves standpoint, they didn't do a ton. They re-signed Matthew Judon on the franchise tag. They picked up Goliath Campbell from Jacksonville for a 5th rounder to improve their pass rush. They did pay Michael Brockers, the defensive tackle from the Rams, $30 million over 3 years. In the draft, you talk about Patrick Queen, number 1, as another guy who's going to provide pass rush playmakers, and J.K. Dobbins and Devin DuVernay, running back and receiver. This is a roster, a championship caliber roster. Okay, there's a reason why I have the Ravens. In terms of depth, that's it's not about just the frontline talent. It's about how much depth they have. And boy, they put a lot of resources into the trenches. this year, and that's something I'm always impressed with and looking for teams to do that. But when you and schedule wise, you were asking about, again, I look at this team. They're deep, they're talented, they have big playability. The defense is loaded. There are not a lot of weaknesses on the Baltimore Ravens from a schedule standpoint. They do have a tough stretch mid-season. Philly, Pittsburgh, bye week, Indy, New England, Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Dallas. That's a 7-game stretch where there are no chances to exhale every one of those teams line as a above 500 team. That said, down the stretch, they probably have the easiest schedule in the NFL in December. Cleveland, Jacksonville, the Giants, and Cincy, their last 4 games. So even if Baltimore has some mid-season struggles, they're certainly a team that's in position to make some noise in December. Ravens look really good on paper. As long as there's no regression from Lamar Jackson. And Lamar Jackson was, MVP worthy a year ago. As long as there's no regression from the QB, there's no reason to think this team is not going to be in contention. And from a depth standpoint, the Ravens, they're in good shape. Although basically you look up and down this division, decent depth for just about all of these teams. Cincinnati, not so much.
And Teddy, thank you for correcting me on getting out to a hot start. Although it's all relative, man. I knew they were at Miami there, and they did get out to a hot start.
Oh yeah. I had them week 1. Yeah.
Right. And then you're right. I mean, the next 4 weeks were rough on them ATS, but I do remember because I was down there in Miami the week before and talking with Whale Capper. He was saying looking to take Baltimore. Sure enough, they wiped the floor with Miami, who obviously got out to a really rough stretch.
Well, I mean, that was so I had the Ravens week 1 last year. I thought it was a pretty easy bet, and I don't think I had an easier bet all year than Baltimore in week 1. That game was over in the first quarter, and I had that despite having the Ravens under their season win, and obviously that single blowout result left them wildly overvalued for the next month. And then after 4 straight ATS losses, they were wildly undervalued for the next 2 months. So, I talked about this in the Sports Betting 101 videos I've been doing every Thursday right here on this channel with Minty Bets. And we talked about the concept of the ebbs and flows of the NFL season. And the Ravens last year were your classic example of a team, they got off, they had the week 1 blowout, they were overvalued for a month, and they were undervalued for 2 months. And again, if you pay attention in the NFL, you will find teams like that go through extended stretches. You can bet on them or against them, and still find value at those numbers.
Yeah, the old buy low, sell high for sure, Teddy, in full effect in not only the stock market, but the sports betting market as well. He's at Teddy_covers on Twitter. My name is Drew Martin. Guys, we're doing this NFL opening line report each and every Monday, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Teddy, I have a question in terms of kind of philosophy speaking in terms of betting. What about with Baltimore, Lamar Jackson being more of a mobile type quarterback here, a little bit more susceptible to injury? Do you think there's any value in betting Baltimore under, thinking there's more of a chance of him getting injured, or is that already kind of factored into the line?
I mean, I don't know that it's factored into the line. There's a pretty big drop off. If Lamar Jackson gets hurt and not that RG3 can't play, but RG3 is not Lamar Jackson, not at this stage of his career, not even close. At least they're smart enough to have a backup quarterback that fits into their offense. But I'm not looking at him. We look at Lamar Jackson. He's been a mobile quarterback the whole way, and he's not a guy with an injury history. I mean, sure, he could get hurt. Any QB can get hurt.
Right.
But I don't look at Lamar Jackson as a QB who has shown consistent susceptibility to injuries through both either in college or in the NFL. So I'm not going to downgrade Baltimore for that. That said, you're not going to find me betting over 11.5 and over 12 in the NFL. It's not my style. It's not the strategy that makes, I can bet on over 9.5. I can even bet on over 10 sometimes. At 10.5 with the right team. I don't get into betting overs with 11, 11.5 or 12. I just don't do it. The team can have a great year and go 11-5. No one. If you said John Harbaugh right now, hey, can we go to the postseason? We're 11-5. We won the division. So yeah, hell yeah, forget the regular season. I don't need 14 regular season wins.
Right.
So and this particular range, once we get above 10.5, I really don't play many overs.
Okay. All right, Teddy, and welcome from Michigan, Paul House. Next team up, we got the Cleveland Browns, 8.5 wins, seeing the under at -125. That's from Caesars right now. So season win total of 8.5. Cleveland Browns here. And last year, Teddy, 6-10 straight up. They went 4-4 at home, 2-6 on the road, 6-6 in conference. In the division, 3-3, and ATS 5-11. Of course, depending on what number you bet them at, they were a losing trending bet there last year in 8-8 over under trends. But Teddy, throw it over to you, man.
I can. I first have to make fun of you.
Do it.
All right, let's do.
Come on.
I'm
a good guy to make fun of.
All right, let's do it together. A B C D E F G H I J K L. I got Cincinnati here, dude. I told you 3 times I tried to get you to get off the Cleveland second and go to Cincinnati. You don't want to do it. So I get to make fun of the alphabet song together. Let's talk Bengals.
All right, I'll set it up again for you. We got the Cincinnati Bengals, 2-14 last year. Terrible year for the Bengals. First pick in the NFL draft, though. We'll see what happens with Joe Burrow. We got 420 points given up last year. Terrible defense there for the Bengals, Steady. 2-6 at home, 0-8, the old Ofer on the road. 0-4 out of conference, 2-10 in conference, 1-5 in division, 6-10 ATS. So a little bit better than that 2-14 straight up, but still 6-10, a losing trend there, 7-9 over under. Cincinnati Bengals lined at 5 wins over -140. Back in correct ABC order, Teddy. What are you thinking for the Bengals this upcoming season?
Thank you so much. And again, CICL. I'm just having fun. And I also, of course, I forgot something when I talked about the last thing on Baltimore. You always talk about the 2 extra games. Remember, they face the NFC East, the AFC South, 6 games from their own division. The Ravens, 2 extra games, Kansas City and at New England, as tough as it gets.
Oh, my gosh.
For Cincinnati, the 2 extra games at Miami and the Chargers, not quite as tough. That being said, it's a team that they only get 2 primetime games all year. The league is not expecting Cincy to be good. And the 2 primetime games, week 2, Thursday night at Cleveland. We made fun of that game last week, I think. We made fun of that game one game. It was like the worst Thursday night game there is. Cincy at Cleveland, week 2. And they play week 15 Monday night against Pittsburgh at home. But largely, the Bengals were an afterthought in terms of the scheduling process, in terms of TV games. You're not going to see Joe Burrow on TV every week. A year ago, Cincinnati, 4.9 yards per play on offense. Again, NFL average is 5.5, so well below average. 6.1 yards per play allowed on defense. Again, well below NFL average. -14 turnovers. Obviously, that's a disaster. 7-9 in 2017, 6-10 in 2018, 2-14 in 2019. The last 3 years have not been good for the Bengals. And coming to this season, again, with a schedule that's fairly reasonable, with a talent base, we have a ton of questions. And of course, when you're -14 in turnovers and getting outgained by 1.2 yards per play, you're going to have a miserable season. But even at 2-14, you said went 6-10 ATS, a bad season, but not absolute carnage for Bengals backers. And of course, now we have a returning head coach in Zach Taylor, and a situation where there's some stability there. Lou Runmo's back as defense coordinator, Brian Callahan's back as offense coordinator. A year ago for Cincinnati, Marvin Lewis, his coaching staff was pretty stable over a long period of time. And then, so last year was a real transition year in terms of coaching for Cincy. This year, at least, they have most of their key pieces back, all their key pieces back on the coaching staff. There's some continuity there for Cincinnati. What they do in the offseason, look, you franchise A.J. Green, you spend some money in free agency. And I like the teams that spend money in free agency on the key components. Defensive tackle, DJ Reader. I think it's a good move to sign him. I spent a bunch of money to get him since 4 years, $53 million. but he puts the run stuff in the middle of the defensive line. Trey Wayans at cornerback, the former Vikings, one of two Vikings cornerbacks they signed, along with Mackenzie Alexander in the offseason. Xavier Su'a-Filo at the offensive line, which is something that, offensive line was a significant problem area. And they had nothing but problem areas last year. So bringing in someone like that can help. Obviously, Joe Burrow at number one, T. Higgins with the first pick of the second round, and a couple of linebackers. You have that Logan Wilson, who impressed me repeatedly at Wyoming last year. He's a playmaker. Team Davis Gaither at App State in the fourth round. So Cincinnati, from an off-season standpoint, good off-season. The Bengals, from a what are they doing and where are they in the NFL pantheon, they're still at the, if not at the very bottom, in the bottom, I'm not even going to call it quartile. They're in the, they're near the bottom, with teams like the Jags and Panthers and the like. So you have a rookie QB. You have an offensive line that was just dismal last year. You have a defense that's been rebuilt, but we don't know that it's there. We expect Cincy to be better than they were this year. But when you look at them from a, where is this team standpoint, it's real simple. All right, they're at the bottom of the division. They're at the bottom of the NFL. And even if Joe Burrow has a great year and the playmakers make some plays, and it's very hard for me to picture Cincy with a winning record. Their upside 7-9. Their upside's not 10-6 or something. The Bengals clearly the weakest team in the division. And again, given their schedule, it's not by any stretch one of these schedules that freaks you out. You're like, oh my God, they can't do it. It's a schedule that is relatively manageable. Given their schedule, I'm not looking to play them under, but this is not a team I'm excited about playing over. I think he is a long way from being in contention in this division, let alone on a full NFL level. They're from a poverty standpoint by far the weakest team in this division.
In Teddy, I think, well, let's answer this question first. Wesley Pipes Clayton on Twitter asked us, will Joe Burrow be Rookie of the Year?
Okay, so, and he said odds. There were odds there, and I appreciate, the numbers you were looking at. Rookie of the Year is not a bet I want to make. Just like I don't bet who's going to win MVP. Anytime you're taking 20 candidates or 50 candidates saying one of these guys is going to win, the house takeout on those wagers is much, much greater. It's not laying 110. A lot of times you're laying minus 150 on that, or minus 180 on that. Mm-hmm. So it's the house takeout is enormous. So unless I see a long shot that I think is very live, I don't get involved in those bets. I'm not looking at anything less than 20-1. And if I see a long shot that's live, I'll put a couple of bucks on it, but few and far between. Burrow's plus 200, okay, against everybody else. And sure, he is the most likely player to win the Rookie of the Year award, no question. But there's a dozen other guys that could easily win it that are going to be in contention. Burrow's playing for a last place team with a bad offensive line. He's never going to be on TV. That's not a plus 200. Give me plus 1,000 on Burrow. Maybe I'm interested. And that's maybe, All that said, if you're looking at Rookie of the Year votes, and I went back and looked at the last 30 years of Rookie of the Year, it's all running backs and quarterbacks, running backs and quarterbacks, running backs and quarterbacks. Don't put your money on anything else. Every once in a while, Odell Beckham will win the award. Once a decade, a receiver will have a breakout season. But it's pretty much, if there's a quarterback that stars, he wins Rookie of the Year. And if there's a running back that stars in the year, the quarterback doesn't star, then he'll win Rookie of the Year. But that's not a bet that I would make. It's not a bet that I would consider Burrow at plus 200. Just the price isn't right.
Okay. And Wesley did send over odds, like you said, with Joe Burrow plus 200, followed by DeAndre Swift at plus 850. And just off of what you were saying, you want kind of 10-1, if not 20-1 odds or better. Justin Herbert looks like 20-1. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the running back, plus, I guess, 10-1. Is there a name that you would throw out there?
I mean, Helaire is a guy that I would definitely look at.
Okay.
For safety. But again, could a Chief win Rookie of the Year? They were so good last year, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know that they're realistically that they'd be looking at someone for Kansas City and he'd get it. It's not a market that I'm enamored with, the rookie of the year market, and it's not just like in this division. I don't know that I'm betting any of these win totals. Although there's one that I would consider. That's the one team coming up next. But it's just not it's not a bet I'm going to recommend people make.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Teddy, and that next team up, the Cleveland Browns. I guess I can do their intro for the second time this show. And guys, reminder here at 3:00 we got Meet the Experts with Lawrence Presman up, and also a full slate of shows here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. So make sure to tune in 10:00 a.m. Pacific and 12 noon Pacific as well. Back-to-back shows here, and the KBO show at 4:00 Eastern. So that would be 1 p.m. Pacific if you're keeping track at home. Cleveland Browns 8.5 wins, under -125 at Caesars. There could be some discrepancy there in the market. We got, of course, the Cleveland Browns. They made a lot of Teddy. I'll tell you, going into last season, a lot of people were talking about the Cleveland Browns, and sure enough, they only finished 6-10, 4-4 at home, 2-6 on the road, 3-3 in the division, and ATS were 5-11 and 8-8 over under teams. So definitely a money loser if you were betting on the Cleveland Browns. 6-10 last year, Teddy, but season win totals pinned at 8.5 here, at least at Caesars. What are you thinking for the Browns, man?
So a year ago, and again, this is a team that was 1-15 and then 0-16 in back-to-back years. They had the great improvement where they went 7-8-1, and we thought Baker Mayfield was the second coming. And then last year with all the hype, as you mentioned, pretty much a disaster from the get-go, 6-10 for the full campaign. From a statistical standpoint, they were decidedly mediocre. 5.6 yards per play on offense, 5.7 yards per play on defense, -8 in turnover margin. So the defense slightly below average, the offense slightly better than average. Turnovers were a problem. They didn't win a whole lot of close games. The hype train was pretty high on Cleveland last year. They were on TV all the time. You talked about it. The media was fixated on Odell Beckham. And this year, the spotlight's not shining on Cleveland the same way. Again, TV games, week 2 versus Cincinnati on Thursday Night Football. Week 4 versus Baltimore. That's their only home game, by the way. Is the TV game against the Ravens. Their only home game in a 5-week stretch, a 5-game stretch. But it's not really that tough. They get the Jags and the Jets and the Giants all on the road during that span. So if they're any good, despite the fact they play 4 to 5 on the road, they could be beating some of those teams and have that marquee matchup against the Ravens. But it's not like last year where we were seeing Cleveland on TV all the time. Now, my biggest concern about the Browns, and again, we got a great Twitter question about Kevin Stefanski and what we can expect from Cleveland in an offseason where you have a new head coach in Stefanski, you have a new coordinator on both sides of the football, and that is, and by the way, you look at the coordinators, Alex Van Pelt on the offensive side. He's been a QB coach for the Bengals for the last 3 years. Last time he was an offense coordinator, he had one season with the Bills in 2009. I think that was an interim job. But it's not like Van Pelt is a coordinator that has been doing this for a long time. And from a defense coordinator standpoint, Joe Woods, the DB coach in Cincinnati. Well, again, a guy without that experience. So first-time head coach, OC and DC with a whole lot of experience. And Stefanski, he really is an interesting guy in terms of his, how he got there. He was a midseason replacement when John DeFilippo got fired in 2018. He spent his entire career with the Vikings. He's only 37 years old. He worked for Brad Childress. He was the assistant quarterbacks coach under Brett Favre. And it's a guy who, much like Freddie Kitchens, and again, Kitchens' demeanor was a problem. Stefanski appears to be a little bit calmer, and that may be a good thing. But from here's a first-time coach and a first-time coordinators on both sides of the ball, or inexperienced coordinators on both sides of the ball, and they're trying to move into a situation where there's no real offseason, where the offseason is as difficult as any offseason in modern NFL history. So those are concerns for Cleveland. They're real concerns. And this is a team that, given the transition, they may be the type of squad that gets better as the season progresses. That is, possible. Look, this is a team that spent a bunch of money again. You bring in Austin Hooper. It's a nice signing. Austin Hooper. And with Hooper and David Njoku, Stefanski loves running those two tight end sets. He did it in Minnesota all the time. You expect them to do a lot of that in Cleveland. Jack Conklin on the offensive line, $42 million, 3-year deal. It's certainly an upgrade for an offensive line. Mayfield took 40 sacks last year. That was 7th most in the NFL. He only took 25 when he was a rookie. And a number of other fill-in guys, Kevin Johnson at cornerback, Adrian Claiborne at defensive end, Case Keenum at QB. And you look at the draft, and again, you like where they put the resources. Offensive line and Jedrick Willis, playmaker and Grant Delpit, guys in the trenches and Nick Harris and Jordan Elliott. I like the Browns offseason. I like their talent level. I have a lot of concerns about what this particular offseason is going to mean in terms of the bringing in new systems and all of that. So I'm modestly bullish on the Browns. This is not a team, when you talk about that first season win total report, they won't be on my first season win total report. We're going to watch the Browns in the preseason. We're going to read everything we can. And if we like what's going on in Cleveland, they may well be on the second. But Cleveland, the team, I got to see them do something. I got to read what's going on in terms of actual players being trained in the program that Stefanski wants them to be in before I get involved with betting them over. I'm not looking to bet, like I said, I'm not looking to bet any of these teams in this division under necessarily. I'm really not. I'm not bullish on the Bengals. If I was going to play one under, it'd be the Bengals, but I didn't think I would do that. But the one over I would consider in this division is Cleveland. But it's got to be I got to see it to believe it. And I got to read it to believe it. Right now, all we know is that the offseason has been disruptive.
Disruptive to say the least, absolutely. And I guess I got continuity at the offensive coordinator. I guess same quarterback position, but I don't know. I mean, the Browns offensively, I just don't. I didn't see it. And last year, kind of looking to fade the public, everybody jumping on the Browns was one thing I was looking at, Teddy. But also, Baker Mayfield, a great college quarterback. But I don't think his athletic ability is necessarily like next level to make those plays at the NFL level. He's not a Lamar Jackson, not even close. But even some people were like, Johnny Manziel. I don't think he's the athlete that Johnny Manziel was. Not that Johnny Manziel did anything in the NFL. I'm just not a Baker Mayfield fan. I don't think he's got a good future in terms of being an NFL quarterback. Do you see anything there with Baker Mayfield and looking to fade him as well?
I'm going to call juries out on Mayfield. And even if he has a bad year, again, this is not a normal offseason. I still wouldn't write off Mayfield if they don't live up to expectations this year. I think he needs, when you're talking about a QB, learning a system, getting proficient in the system, and again, a young QB. It's different if we're talking about, Ben Roethlisberger or Tom Brady or whatever, who, by the way, don't get put in new offenses because they're good at running the old one. But when you often have a young QB, and here's the offense you learn. No, learn this offense. No, learn this offense. Now, oh, you stunk again, you're bad. And then you never get another shot. I don't look at that, and say that's the case for Mayfield. He was not a good quarterback last year. Make no mistake about it. And if Mayfield stinks this year, Case Keenum's not going to be the answer, even though Keenum is a backup for Stefanski and had some, the Browns are not a playoff team with Case Keenum at QB. I would put Baker Mayfield as the biggest question mark on the team. If Mayfield is good, the Browns will be good. If Mayfield is bad, they won't. So what we're going to try to do between now and the beginning of the regular season and throughout the course of the regular season is read everything we can about what's going on with Mayfield's offseason, what's going on with him, how he's learning the offense, et cetera, et cetera. We'll watch him and we'll watch the coaches' pressers come August. We'll watch him in the preseason game and see if he looks comfortable in that offense or not. If he doesn't, we're not betting the Browns over. I'll tell you that much. Baker Mayfield, from a like one guy perspective, he's as important as how one player affects his team. He's as important as any player in the NFL this year. If he's good, the Browns are good. If he's bad, the Browns are bad. And that's as simple as it gets.
Yeah, well said, Teddy. I'm just more on the side of I would try to make money betting against them rather than be on them, I guess, instead of maybe still up in the air. But guys, we got one team left here, so feel free to throw out any questions on YouTube if you're watching, or if you're watching on Twitter, feel free to throw them out. We'll hit them at the end here. Also, please smash the like button. 10 a.m. Pacific time. This is the NFL opening line report each and every week right here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. We got the last team up in the AFC North here. Pittsburgh Steelers. Caesars has them at 9 wins, over -130. So a little bit of juice there towards the over of 9 wins with the Pittsburgh Steelers. 8-8 last year. They scored 289 points. They let up 303 points. 5-3 at home, 3-5 on the road. In division was 3-3 as well. 9-7 ATS here, talking about the Steelers, Teddy, and 4-12, huge under trenders, just 4 overs and 12 unders last year. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously with the injury at the quarterback position, likely contributed some towards that under trend with the Steelers. But this upcoming year, Teddy, 9 wins is what Caesars is pinning them at here. What are you thinking for the Steelers?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Steelers finished 500 last year, despite the fact you talk about that under trend. They were under machine. They gained 4.7 yards per play on offense. Okay, that's not just bad, that's dismal. All right, but what did they do? They allowed 4.7 yards per play on defense. It was elite. Finished +8 in turnovers as well. And that's how they took 8-8 with Mason Rudolph and Devlin Hodges at QB. They stuck Hodges out there last year, man. Yeah. He's not supposed to be the starting quarterback for a playoff. And again, they still finished 8-8, 13-3 in 17, 9-6-1 in 2018, 8-8 last year. I thought Mike Tomlin was brilliant with his team a year ago, considering, I mean, it wasn't just the quarterback position. They didn't have a 1,000-yard receiver. They didn't have a 500-yard running back. Their skill position talent was injured or non-existent a year ago. The offensive line wasn't good. And they went into week 17. They were still alive to make the playoffs, So you look at this year. I forgot to get it for week 17. They went at least week 16. They were still alive to make the playoffs. You look at this year and look at that schedule right off the bat. They could be 6-0 to start the season before facing the Ravens in week 7 before their bye. It's not a tough early season slate. All 6 games at the beginning are, lined against teams lined at 500 or lower. And then after their bye week, they have the Jaguars, the Bengals twice, and the Redskins. 3 TV games late season. The league wants Pittsburgh to be in contention this year. They have Thanksgiving night against Baltimore. They have Buffalo week 14, Sunday Night Football, Monday Night Football week 15 at Cincinnati. The back-to-back TV games for Pittsburgh in September. Randy Fisher stays the offense coordinator. They bring in Matt Canada as a new QB coach. From a free agent standpoint, Stefan Wisniewski, I thought, played with the Chiefs last year. Got a couple of Super Bowl rings. I don't know how much he's going to start. He's certainly the type of versatile lineman that looks to be that makes sense to me. Eric Ebron, a tight end. Derek Watt. They spent $10 million on a free agent guy, on a special teams guy, Derek Watt. Didn't hurt that he was his teammate's brother. But spending money for a guy like that speaks about Pittsburgh's mentality. They recognize the importance of special teams. I actually respect that move. When you say, I see a special team stud and I want that guy on my team, and I'm willing to pay him $10 million, I don't argue with that. They franchised Bud Dupree at linebacker. They had a monster year last year, 11.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. Of course, the first-round pick was traded to Miami for Minkah Fitzpatrick. Fitzpatrick single-handedly won them a couple of games last year and was an absolute difference maker. That defense looks loaded. That being said, they didn't have a whole lot of draft capital, only 6 draft choices. Second rounder, Chase Claypool, wide receivers. The third rounder, Alex Highsmith, the linebacker. Anthony McFarland Jr., the running back in the 4th round. Kevin Johnson, the guard out of Louisiana. Pittsburgh, from a splashy move standpoint, they didn't make a whole lot of splashy moves. That's not necessarily the way the Steelers are built. From a skill position talent standpoint, Pittsburgh looks a little bit short compared to much of the NFL. And again, a team without a go-to back or a go-to receiver a year ago. We'll see how the receivers step up. Again, it was a young receiving core a year ago. But it's another team like Cleveland. We talked about Cleveland with Baker Mayfield. Here's Big Ben. He's 38 years old. He's coming off a season-ending injury. You know, what's Roethlisberger got left in the tank? If Big Ben is good, Pittsburgh's a contender. If Big Ben is not good, the Steelers. And of all, you know, Cam Newton makes sense in Pittsburgh. You know, I don't know if you want to bring him in. I mean, I've been trying to think of where Cam Newton makes sense. And I can understand why the Steelers wouldn't sign him because it sends the wrong message to your star. Mm-hmm. But if Roethlisberger's no good, boy, you'd really like to have Cam Newton step in. Because if they had Cam Newton behind him, you're looking at Pittsburgh over. Without Cam Newton behind him, I can't look at Pittsburgh over because there's too many concerns about Roethlisberger. And I don't know if the Steelers are going to score. I mean, again, 4.7 yards per play on offense last year, and an offense that still lacks playmakers. Those are concerning things for me because we're going to, of course, the trend for the Steelers over the last 3 years is, you know, going and they're trending in the wrong direction. I really do have mixed feelings about Pittsburgh. I do like this defense. This is a loaded defense, and 3 of the 4 teams in this division have defenses that are loaded. You know, maybe some unders in these division games in the AFC North, because obviously Cleveland and Baltimore are also 2 teams that I expect to get stopped. The Steelers want to be playing those low-scoring games, and we'll have to see. Again, all we know from Big Ben is, we don't have anything to read on Big Ben. All we know is there's a crazy beard he goes on Twitter every once in a while we see him with. We'll have to see what he looks like on the field. But, you know, much like Mayfield for Cleveland, Roethlisberger for Pittsburgh is, you know, obviously the quarterback's the most important position. But when you have big question marks at the QB position, like both those teams do, you know, Burrow's not a question mark. We know he's going to struggle. Okay, at least on some level. He's a rookie. Rookie QBs in the NFL struggle. They throw interceptions. They see coverages that they haven't seen. They're not a lot of rookie QBs that come in and start chucking for 300 yards a game. You know, it's the exception rather than the rule. Whereas with Mayfield and Roethlisberger, for both these guys, the upside is Super Bowl contender, and the downside is, you know, 6-10, 5-11. And the QB position alone will be responsible for a big chunk of that disparity, and a big chunk of determining, you know, is this team a playoff team or are they, you know, I keep thinking NBA lottery team, but NFL should have a lottery too. Feels better. Now we don't have teams tanking a team.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be good. I'm a lottery fan as well. And Teddy, just doing a little bit of research here. Looks like ESPN has Pittsburgh, Ben Roethlisberger, followed by Mason Rudolph, and I'm talking about their depth chart here. Devin Hodges and then Paxton Lynch. Have you heard any shuffling there? And obviously, Cam Newton would be a big boost there behind Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, but I can understand the psychology of why they can't sign him. You can't send Roethlisberger that message. Can't do it.
Yeah.
If I'm running the Steelers organization, I got Cam Newton on speed dial if Roethlisberger struggles, but I don't sign him prior to the season. You can't.
I see that, and I mean, with Mason Rudolph, what comes to probably most people's mind is obviously got hit in the head with his own helmet there. Other than that, I mean, not a big Mason Rudolph fan. He's not the guy.
Come on, you watched him at Okie State. He's okay. You know, I would say the Steelers would be lucky if he's serviceable. I never looked at Mason Rudolph in college and say, oh, yeah, this guy's coming out. He's going to be an NFL starter. No. And at no point in his college career was I like, yeah, this guy's primed for success at the next level. Is he a warm body they can fit in? Sure. You know, but is he someone who's going to make if you got Steelers over 9 and Mason Rudolph's the QB week 4, I don't like your chances.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I mean, but when you use the term warm body at the quarterback position, that's usually not something I'm looking to bet on. And then Devin Hodges and Paxton Lynch. I mean, I would have thought Paxton Lynch would have been a little bit better than a fourth on the depth chart here. But
Paxton Lynch has been so. I mean, he's literally been that bad. If you watched him he's played for now 3 different teams or whatever. Every time I see him, even in the preseason, Paxton Lynch looks, It's not there for the, whatever he had in college is not translated to the NFL level, even close. And again, when you have a guy who's, someone traded up for him, he's a former first rounder, he's going to get his chances in camp. Maybe he beats out Duck Hodges. But if Paxton Lynch is starting your game, if Paxton Lynch is starting week 4 instead of Mason Rudolph and Big Ben's hurt, you could sell your Steelers over ticket for, pennies on the dollar. It's not going anywhere. I'm ranking Lynch well below Mason Rudolph right now. And we've seen more of Lynch than Rudolph. Paxton Lynch is not an NFL starting quarterback. He's not even close.
Okay. And Teddy, we do have a couple questions.
It's a John Elway mistake. There have been plenty of them.
Okay. Teddy, we got a couple questions here and finish them off from Twitter as well. So, guys, last chance here. Throw them out on YouTube. Any questions, we'll try to answer them here live. Also, remember, 10 a.m. each and every Monday. That's 10 a.m. Pacific time. This is the NFL opening line report. He's Teddy Covers at Teddy_Covers on Twitter. I am Drew Martin on Twitter at Drew Martin Bets. Feel free to throw out any questions to us any time of the week, and we'll answer them here on the show. We got Jonathan S. asking a question right now via YouTube. Teddy, if you were considering Browns over, would you consider taking plus 140 on them to make the playoffs instead? Great show, guys.
Yes, I would consider that. Absolutely. Great question. And it's certainly another way to look at Cleveland, and especially in a year where there's an extra playoff team. That makes sense to me. Absolutely.
Good look there, Jonathan. That is a way to maybe get an edge on the betting marketplace. And Teddy, actually, before kickoff of the NFL season, I would look for that kind of spread there between the bets and to kind of come in where there wouldn't be this plus 140 value on that, right?
Agree. That's a marketplace not being fully efficient right now. It's not. I mean, it's not a way off price on Cleveland. I mean, it really isn't a way. They are slight underdogs to make the postseason, even at current numbers. But at plus 140, I mean, my personal number would be more like plus 120. So it's not. They deserve to be underdogs at that, given their win total.
Okay. The fan asking about Cincinnati. Yes, we talked to him, but in just 5 minutes after we finish, you can just watch the replay here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. How good will Burrow be, in your opinion, Teddy?
He's a rookie quarterback on a team with a lot of moving pieces. I don't expect Joe Burrow to be a star year one. Burrow, certainly, again, you look at last year at this time where Joe Burrow was in the draft conversation and the NFL conversation. He wasn't in the NFL conversation, the draft conversation. It was an afterthought, So he had a remarkable senior year in college. I do not expect Joe Burrow to come in and be a stud from day one. Not given the Bengals offensive line. I don't think he's going to be dismal necessarily, but when we look at Peyton Manning's rookie year, you can look at all these, star quarterbacks who did not have great rookie years. I'd be much more inclined to think that Burrow will struggle than I will to think he's going to be a stud, especially, again, in a division with some pretty good defenses.
Yeah, I'm not looking to bet on him to do very well either, mainly for the same reasons that you stated. I mean, Peyton Manning had an awful rookie season and then, one of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Not that Joe Burrow will be that, but I just think there's a lot to kind of live up to, especially you were talking about his draft status before his last year in college there, Teddy. I believe, listening to Todd McShay, he was kind of borderline going to be drafted. Before.
Yeah, go back and look at Steele from last year or whatever and see where he's ranked in the quarterback pantheon. Guy had an incredible season, and he deserved to rise up the board. But do it at the NFL level. For as good as the SEC is, it's not the NFL. And I mean, we bring up Manning there. We can bring up 40 other quarterbacks that that first year in the NFL is definitely a learning curve. It really is. So. Appreciate the question, Nathaniel. But I'm not excited about that on Joe Burrow. Not initially.
Okay. Teddy, we got another one here from Chris Lippens. How big of a disadvantage is it for a team to be playing in a second consecutive road game or third in 4 weeks?
It is a modest disadvantage. It is not a huge disadvantage. The better coaches will have their teams prepped. Some of it depends on what happened the previous week. You know, if a team has a big road division game the one week and then they go on the road next week and it's a clear flat spot, you want to over-adjust for that. I tend to look at the back-to-back games or the particularly 4 road games in 5 weeks. That to me is a negative schedule spot. That final road game. Also a big difference if you're traveling across the country. You know, a road game where the Giants play at Philly one week and DC the next week, that's not a tough road trip. You know, a road trip where you're playing in Miami one week, you know, where New England's playing Miami one week and the Chargers the next week, that is a tough road trip. You know, that's a hypothetical. Actually, New England, of course, they get both LA games in back-to-back weeks. They won't be getting to trip back and forth this year. But the answer is there's certainly some nuance to it in terms of how much you actually adjust a power rating for a game. Team on a second of back-to-backs off a win, I'll usually knock them a half point. You know, in terms of when we do this open line report during the course of the season, I say, you know, here's what the market number is. Here's a look-ahead number. Here's my number. My number will usually factor in a half point if it's back-to-back road. So not much, but some. The answer is not a huge disadvantage, but some disadvantage.
Okay. And Teddy, one here from Twitter, Hobgoblin asking if hubs where teams play become the norm for sports, how would that affect it? And would there be no more owners, he asks? He's talking about COVID-19 here, and he clarifies it as if all the teams need to play at 1 or 2 locations, if that goes on, no home stadiums, no tickets, no parking, would that be no more owners? But I guess if you want to talk about the owners, but if there are teams not playing at their home stadiums, how much would that affect you?
It could affect things a lot. I appreciate the question, Hobgoblin. It's not a question I was expecting, and those make me, you know, I'm always interested. Yeah. You know, because I've thought about it. You know, so when you think about the hub, and I doubt the NFL will go to the hub. You know, that it works better for other sports than it does for the NFL. So if the NFL goes to hubs, I'd be surprised. It would certainly limit home field edge. You know, I don't know what you factor in for home field edge. Probably nothing. Maybe a half point or something, but not a whole lot. But I would think again, I would only think that's a 1-year dealio. You know, if it should go to hubs, if it ends up being more than 1 year, then we're in bigger trouble than we want to even consider at this stage. But certainly, when you talk about the owner, I mean, and from an ownership standpoint, look, I mean, I talked about how I don't like the concept of owners and owning teams and say, oh, I don't like it here, let's move there. I think the city should own teams. It makes sense to me. But no city can play $1 billion for a team or $2 billion for a team. The taxpayers wouldn't buy it at this stage of the game. And that means that the owners will own it until they sell somebody, until they sell it. So, no, I don't think that would have anything to, you know, there are plenty of owners who live in other places and buy a franchise here, you know. So the location of the franchise themselves has very little to do with with who's going to own the team. I don't see anything changing the current situation where some owner gets to decide, you know, who the GM is going to be and whether the team's going to move or any of that kind of stuff. Was one guy.
Yeah, I see it as well. I mean, the owner thing is kind of weird, but I mean, there's no way that change. I would think. I mean, they own the company, or the team, so it is what it is. But do you take a lot of thought into look-ahead spots or let-down spots? That from Big ISO on YouTube, Teddy.
I'm sorry. It feels like either your volume's down or my volume's up.
Okay, we got another question here from Big ISO on YouTube. Do you take a lot of thought into look-ahead spots or let-down spots?
Absolutely. I mean, when you talk about handicapping the NFL, it's very much situational handicapping is as key a component you're going to find. So the look-aheads, the let-downs, the sandwich spots, and the markets reflect them. You know, you could always see it in the markets where, hey, you know, they should be 7 on the road, but they're just coming off a big Monday night game, and then next week they got the big divisional matchup, and instead they're only laying 5 on the road. Happens all the time in the NFL. So you must factor in the situational spots, and the markets do significantly for the letdowns, for the look-aheads. That's one of the biggest movers in the market on a week-in, week-out basis for the NFL.
Yeah, I'm totally with you, and that's across all sports, really. Look ahead, situational spots, more and in the NFL, but really across all of sports betting would be my advice there, biggest. So thanks you for the question, guys. We got to wrap it up against it time-wise, but follow him on Twitter at Teddy_covers, myself at Drew Martin Betts. Feel free to throw us out any questions. 10 a.m. Pacific time each and every Monday. This is the NFL Opening Line Report. Guys, please smash the like button. It does help us out. Teddy, anything else you want to throw out there before we shut this down?
Yeah, have a great day. Thanks for hanging out with us, man. I'm telling you, this is the best part of my week right here. I prep for it and then I do it. It's good. It's a good thing. It's very therapeutic. So thanks for hanging out with us. Hope to see you guys again next Monday. Be sure to check out all the other great programming right here on the WagerTalk and Sports Memo YouTube channel.
Yeah, there you go, Teddy. The voice inflection at its best, one of the best at it. And guys, Prez is back at 3 o'clock. Meet the experts. And tomorrow at this same time slot, we got the college football preview show with Rob Vino and Ralph Michaels joining me. So, guys, thanks for joining us today. We will be back next Monday. Please come back and join us as we preview the AFC South next week. Feel free to throw out any questions there, guys. So remember to wash your hands. Stay safe, guys. Best of luck with your bets. Be well.